Aloha. Welcome back to Talk Story with John Waihee and his favorite guest, Jay Fidell. Jay and I cannot avoid these types of meetings, because both of us are like junkies. We are junkies. The political system is something that we're addicted to. And I was just telling Jay that he's the one guest that before we even get into the meeting, we are already emoting about what we're going to talk about. So anyway, Jay, welcome.
Thank you, John. It's an honor to be with you.
I love having you on, because it's so good to find a kindred spirit out there that thinks that this is better, this kind of a conversation is better than going to McDonald's and eating their new chocolate chip cookies, which, by the way, I recommend highly. I found out that Keith Amemiya is a fan. He goes and gets, chocolate. I got to see if Rick Blangiardi knows about the McDonald's chocolate chip cookie. But talking about things like that, Jay, you and I have just been, we just took a break right now from watching the Republican convention. And I know that you watched last week the Democrats. And so let me begin this whole conversation by asking you what was your feeling, your reaction? What are your sense of the difference between the two?
I didn't watch the whole Democrat convention, and I haven't watched a whole lot of the Trump convention because my stomach can't handle watching the.
Yeah, well, your standards are, you always like to turn off the whatever you're listening to when you hear the first lie, but you can't do that. You can't do that.
Well, we had plenty of that going on in the Trump convention. You know what strikes me is I think. This may not answer your question, but ultimately I will, is that we live in a world of distraction. And the real issues you and me and voters everywhere have to decide, what's really important. But we're faced with distraction every day. I don't know about you, John, but I get hundreds of emails every day, yes. One political person or another. I believe some of them are provocations from Moscow, actually.
And if you ever made a contribution, you get
right.
The second and the third and the 40th request, as long as the Moscow type thing.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, distraction upon distraction, and Trump is really good at distracting us from the reality. And you have to sort of sort it out. And although the conventions, both of them, have their place in the sun here, it's an election year. Fact is that the important things are, we have COVID going on. We have a depression happening under our feet. We have businesses failing. I mean, it cut me to the quick today to hear that Nobu's is going out of business permanently.
Really?
Yeah, one of my favorite restaurants there.
Wow. Well, I think that you just gave me three ways things are different. I mean, first of all, we called last week the Democratic convention, and you're calling this current event the Trump convention. I mean, it's graphic how this entire, I don't know what you call it. I mean, this entire extravaganza is built around one person. I mean, it is. Now that's not to say that Biden didn't have a lot of people saying, let's elect Joe Biden, which is, par for the course in a Democratic convention or any convention. But traditionally, the candidate speaks on the last night. Traditionally, what you try to do with a convention is incorporate a lot of the various the various party members into this movement. You know, you see none of it. I mean, this is about Donald Trump. And I was amazed that one of the speakers essentially rewrote history with respect to the coronavirus. Nobody talked. I mean, Donald Trump is the greatest person that ever handled the virus, and the rest of it. And yet we all know that here it is. America's got like 4% of the population of the world, and yet 20% of the deaths from corona. It's just amazing.
Well, it started out with lies. Even before he was elected, Kellyanne Conway, who is leaving the White House the end of the week.
Do you think it was her daughter that actually pushed her out of that administration? Daughter file was wanted to be emancipated because she couldn't not, she just would not put up with where her mom was, what she was doing.
Yeah, she was being bullied in school too.
Uh,
and of course, Kellyanne didn't agree with George. But the thing about Kellyanne is that she was really, really good as a liar. And Trump would trot her out when he wanted some big and repeated lies. And that went back to the 2016.
Well, the interesting thing about Kellyanne and about what you just said, which I happen to agree with, was before she went to work for Trump, when she worked for other Republicans. But generally, her reputation within the news profession was someone who was professional, who didn't lie. In fact, when she came on board to work on the Trump campaign, the word from the news, all the news channels, in Fox, CBS, MSNBC, all of it, CNN, was that, oh, great, he's finally got somebody up there that's going to be straight. And no more. That's gone.
More.
Yeah, that's absolutely gone.
And certainly this convention is just one sequence after another of people lying.
Well, yeah, but what's really interesting to me so far is how much of this convention is so narrow. I mean, it is focusing to one portion of America, and if you're not in the ultra-right, I can understand, and they're doing it well. I mean, as far as focusing in, I mean, they're giving the ultra-right the right languaging to talk about their biases and their prejudices. But they have that couple. It was earlier today. They put the couple on that was in, I guess it was St. Louis in Missouri, where protesters were marching past their house to go down the street and protest at the mayor's house or the mayor's mansion, which, by the way, is, if you ever lived at Washington Place, you begin to appreciate how often, your house gets protest against. I mean, it was like, in fact, I used to send out, like coffee and stuff, just because after a while you get to know the protesters. Now, that is not meant to depreciate the protesting, but it does point out that one of the consequences in a democracy of being an elected official is that people tend from time to time not to agree with what's happening, and they make their feelings known, and that's supposed to happen anyway. All of these people are marching past the house, and this couple comes running out with the guns and and all of that. They're one of the stars of the Republican convention. But what was interesting was in their presentation, what they were talking about were all these little subtle words that you don't want people like that moving into our neighborhood. In fact, I think it was the wife that said that, something very close to that you're not going to be safe if Donald Trump is not around, and the rest of it, and I'm thinking to myself, you have that was what 1960s were all about. They were talking about how the people in the 50s, how people fled the city to the suburbs and didn't want any more black people, didn't want any Latinos, didn't want anybody else going out there. I don't think that we in Hawaii appreciate that kind of subtle racist language, really, if I can use the term, as much as people live on the mainland. You see, the one thing about Hawaii, and I'm not saying Hawaii doesn't have any problem, and because obviously you got Wailai Kahala and you got Kalihi, and you got different neighborhoods on one hand, but on the other hand, if you own a piece of land anywhere, it's very valuable. You got it, you keep it, and there was some, when I was representing the Kalihi district in the legislature, there were some mansions right next door to houses that obviously needed repair. And it would have to do with the fact that this land was very valuable. So we don't appreciate, I think, as much as people on the mainland do, or I should say the continent, right? Oh, incorrect, correct, I appreciate the idea that certain people might move in and depreciate your homes, the value. And not because of their color now, it's all this rationalization. It's because they are noisy people or whatever. And but it's all subtle. It's all subtle, and everybody knows it. And yet here they are on national television. I mean, I don't know, Jay, it used to be that the Republican Party was the party of, the stuffy guys, the guys who, want to talk about economics and stuff, and want to have debates. And yet we see this party that my mother was such a proud member of deteriorating into conspiracy theories going back to the 1950s and the rest of it.
Well, it's pretty visible this week at the Republican convention. There was some speculation in the paper that maybe he would see this, he would realize that a convention built all around him, a convention built around what he's been selling for the past 3 years, that is racism and bigotry and hatred and divisiveness and isolationism and you name it, all the worst things in the world. The worst things in the world. You'd think he would get away from that. You'd think he would try to build a tent like the Democrats traditionally do. But no, he's not doing that.
Well,
he's doing dog whistles all through this convention. You'll see, John.
Well, I knew, and actually became kind of a friend with him because I like to go to his restaurant and eat the barbecue, and that was there was this guy that actually began was Ronald Reagan's campaign manager. His name was Lee Atwater. In the 1980s, and maybe we'll talk about that. I know we got a break coming up, so we'll do that. We come back, we ought to talk about what Ronald Reagan would do if he saw this presidency and this convention,
Yeah.
Because, it's just so different.
It is.
Aloha, I'm Lillian Cumic, host of Lillian's Vegan World, the show where we talk about veganism and the plant-based diet, located in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm a vegan chef and cooking instructor, and I have lots of information to share with you about how awesome this plant-based diet is. So do tune in every second Thursday from 1 p.m. Aloha.
Welcome back to Talk Story with John Waihee and his favorite political junkie, Jay Fidell. And here we are. We're having a lot of fun talking about the two conventions and the current one that's going on, the Republican convention. But we're also reminiscing about the fact, and I was just talking about that Lee Atwater. I think many political scientists will credit him as being the person who perfected negative campaigning in its early days. I mean, people used to believe that if you did that and you're not careful, backfire, and he showed that it wouldn't. He also, by the way, perfected mail-in ballots. And the Republicans built their resurgence on the mail-in ballots. And Ronald Reagan got elected governor of California. He lost the vote on election day, but he won the governorship, which led to the presidency of the United States on when they counted the mail-in ballots, because the Republican Party were much more technologically, even in those days, ahead of the Democrats, and they went out and actually got people to vote. So we do that. And what's so amazing about all of that is here these people are. And Lee Atwater, in fact, I think he wrote a book, but his favorite saying, by the way, the Red, White, and Blue barbecue joint in Washington, D.C. I don't know if it's still there, but Red, White, and Blue was his restaurant, and I used to go there all the time. And obviously, we had a lot of fun, talking with each other. And he had some great barbecue too. You got to give him credit. Republicans make better barbecue. They do. I don't want to sound like some kind of chauvinistic Southerner, but they make better barbecue than Democrats.
This takes me to some of this Republican convention where, if you thought that Biden was flying the flag a lot last week, Trump has outflagged him.
Oh man, everywhere. But the idea back then was the Big Tent, bringing in all the tent.
Yeah.
Now I notice that they are trying to look somewhat inclusive of America, because I have it's like the one or two people of color that always sit behind Donald Trump when he's giving a speech.
Yeah,
so
right.
they bring in Herschel Walker and various people in, but the rhetoric is not there. It's all like negative, It's not inclusive, and they're really. But you can see the strategy. I mean,
they're appealing to the base. And they're trying to bring in maybe the independents. There was a piece in today's Times, I think, about how 10% of the voters, even now today, are undecided. And that was the experience back in 2016, the undecided voters. So he's trying to bring them in.
But he's also carefully appealing and he's also appealing very carefully to the hidden fears, the worst fears of people.
Yes.
So these protests all across the country, which, by the way, somebody just got shot again
in Wisconsin. Today.
Wisconsin, yeah. And this gentleman had 3 kids in the car, and he's reaching to open the car door, and the 2 cops standing behind him shot him in the back.
In the back, 7 times.
Right. So this is happening. And so you've got all these grievances and everything coming out. But the hidden fear is you're going to play up to AOC and defund the police. They're going to defund the police. They're going to take away. Well, actually, if you study her, and I'm not, if you study who is really defunding the police, and nobody's going to talk about it during this convention. Trump just cut in the federal budget $500 million that was out there to go support the local police.
He'd better not talk about it.
No, but you see the strategy, right?
Yeah.
The strategy is to play the fears of the people who want the comfortable, safe neighborhood. They might actually be like really decent people in terms of wanting the best for America and the rest of it. But they are at the same time they're scared. They don't know they're worried about crime and the rest. So talking about Atwater again, he was the guy that taught up the Willie Houghton ad and beat Dukakis with it. And so there's a version of that. There's this very targeted version of that. And it's so you want to win the suburbs. You want to win the suburbs by not appealing to their best nature. It seems like we're going to hear a lot of that in this
yeah. Not only from him, from the people who he has selected to speak for him. They'll all repeat the same things.
Over and over and over again, and then you're going to talk about school safety. And what is the solution to school safety? I don't know. I mean, I didn't hear one, but it says that Donald Trump took away some of the things that Obama passed. I don't know if that's true or not, but what it seemed to be is like I want to be able to carry a gun in school.
That'll help.
And it's like all of that kind of stuff. Again, nothing positive,
No, and he's on the voting issue. Mail-in ballots, as distinguished, which are not distinguishable from absentee ballots. There's no difference, but this campaign against mail-in ballots. And today he was saying that the state boxes, to submit your ballot into this box on the street corner in Louisville.
Yeah, they're all covered.
They're all covered with virus now. There's no evidence of that at all, or for that matter, his old trope that mail-in ballots are rife with fraud. There's no evidence of that even now. No evidence of that.
And it was really amazing that when you point that out and you say there's no evidence of this, the response to that is, well, that's why it's fraud, because you can't see it. You don't know it, so they must be doing it well. They must be fraudulently well. And, it's that kind of rhetoric. What was really interesting today was because he becomes a central character in all of this. This is The Apprentice, right?
Yeah.
So he had a bunch of people, looks like they were at the White House. And a couple of them were postal workers. They were first responders. And he was telling them and telling the world how much he loves postal workers. He's going to make sure that they get paid and they don't do all of this stuff. And the guy just, I don't know what to do. It's a transactional liar. I mean.
Well, he said he was going to veto the Democrats' bill for money for the post office. He said he's going to, and McDonald's said, well, if he's going to veto it, we're not going to even consider it. The old routine, right? It's
and well, which brings up, I guess, my last point in this whole thing, and that is how many prominent Republicans are nowhere, including Mitch McDonald. I don't know. Is he going to speak at all to this convention? I heard he wasn't even going to be there.
I didn't see his name, actually.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. There's some thought among Republican strategists that these guys want to be sure that when he loses, if he loses, that they have an escape hatch. They have a way out of all of this.
I think that in large part, this convention, Republican convention, is merely to make us forget the Democratic convention. It's just another great big distraction. It's a shiny object that we should all spend our time watching, but it doesn't really have any effect. It has no effect on me, except when I find them lying. But I don't think it's really going to affect that much. It's merely going.
Well, what's interesting is that the tradition, the tradition for years, I mean, this has been the American way of life tradition for politics, is that you don't comment or you don't attack each other during your conventions. You give everybody's got a shot to do it. Well, this time around, Donald can't help himself. He's his only attack machine, right? So what happens is, he just spent the whole week taking, twisting, doing everything to disrupt. He's his own disruptor, and he does that at the Democratic convention. This time around, Democrats are actually planning to be everyday responding. So, for better or for worse, we just lost another great American tradition. I mean, just another step toward partisanship. Anyway, you and I are going to have another session with some of our local pundits. Hopefully next week sometime. I'm not sure. So for those of you listening, keep up with the scheduling here at ThinkTech Hawaii, and you're going to be treated. And next week is a good time because then we would have seen the full convention. Yeah. And we would have seen it. We would have seen some of the polls. We would have seen all of this. And by the way, if I hear it another time that Donald Trump did the best job with the virus, containing the virus in the whole world, and that he created the greatest recovery of the economy, it's amazing. The people who, the country club people who think that the economy and the market, the stock market, are the same. It's amazing. Yes, we need to talk to all the people that have no jobs right now.
So sad. But I give you one piece of advice, though, John. You never want to watch the remaining days of the Republic Convention after you've eaten a meal.
I have so many Republican friends, and that are they don't know what to do. They literally don't know what to do because that's really the character of this administration is really not there. But anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with more Talk Story with John Waihee.